Let's take a closer look at the Eastern Conference. Lot of movement this summer. The top 8 looks pretty good. The bottom 7 does not. Where do the Pacers fit in? Who will shine? Who won't? Shane Young, who covers the whole league better than anybody, is going to join me to break it all down today on the Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, y'all? Happy Tuesday, and welcome into another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes and SI, and today we are talking all things Eastern Conference. Whew. A lot of movement in the East. Mikal Bridges on the move. Paul George is back in the conference. A lot of teams are trying to get better in different ways. What does that mean for the Pacers? Where do they fit in to this hierarchy behind Boston? A big morass of teams that were all within 3 or 4 wins last year. Can the Pacers move up in the standings? What's it all going to look like? Shane Young from Forbes Sports is going to join us to break it all down again. I think this is the 4th year we've done this. We sometimes do awards and all-stars together, too. He's the best. He covers the whole league. He knows the situations of every team very well. We're going to get into the East from 1 to 8. Where do the Pacers fit in? What's their range? How does it all look? Let's just jump right in with Shane Young. We are through the TJ McConnell stuff, which means let's zoom out. Let's talk about the mighty, not really, Eastern Conference, a conference with a very clear top 8. And then there's 7 other teams in the conference that might do something this year. We'll see. And we have to break all of that down. And who better to talk about the whole league, or at least someone who knows a lot about every team, that Mr. Recurring comes back to help me learn more about these teams. It's Shane Young from Forbes Sports. Shane, thank you for returning. What do you just think of the East right now? Did I summarize that well, that it's a very clear top 8 and then chasm? What word you describe that gap between 8 and 9?
It reminds me a lot of 2014, where it's like, yeah, the rest of the league after 7-8 is just garbage. So it is what it is. I'm sorry, Brooklyn, Chicago. I'm sorry all these teams that aren't going to be good, but that's how I would view it. Like a very clear top 3 and 4, and then maybe a couple of different tiers in between there. But I agree, like 1 through 8, unless there's injuries, we know who they're going to be.
Someone's going to win the 9-10 game, right? Which means one of like Chicago, Toronto, Atlanta, like one of these teams is going to be 1 win away from a playoff series. Which is just
and you remember in 2014. You remember in 2014, we had a 37-win playoff team, I think. Like, so.
This year's going to be the argument. I mean, I hate to play in tournament anyway, but this year's going to be a great argument against the play-in. Like the year the Spurs tripped into 10th with 36 wins a few years ago. It's like, they don't want this. They don't want to.
What we should allow, to be honest with you, I write a letter to Adam Silver today. We should allow the West 9, 10, 11 to also compete for that East spot.
I would be all for that, honestly.
Let's get Wemby in the playoffs against the Celtics in the first round.
The Rockets are going to win like 45 games and be like fighting for their life to be playing meaningful games after the regular season. It's going to suck. It's crazy out there. The East is not like that. And before we dive into tearing things off, where the Pacers sit, I actually kind of think that made it easier for teams like the Cavs and the Pacers and the Heat to just be like, okay, we can stick with what we're doing because our chances to make the playoffs are still really high. And all those teams probably think they got better for one reason or the other, all different reasons, but still. But, just knowing that you have such a blanket of like, oh, the top 8's so easy to make this year. Like that, obviously you want to keep up when your counterparts are making big moves, but you don't have to do that right away. And you can really see what's going on. It's just such an odd conference right now. Like I thought that was such a story in the NBA last year, is that so many teams were going for it because the draft sucked and the play-in tournament existed. And then Cooper Flag came, and then some teams had bad years, and all of a sudden it's back to normal. It's like, oh, there's very clearly a big group of tanking teams, which wasn't the case last year.
I know. And everyone talks about Cooper Flag like it's like not Wemby level, but probably Zion level, right? Yeah. If you remember back in 2019, I think that was. So it's going to be fascinating. Like I could see a lot of these teams just trying to get into the teens of wins. Like, let's not even try to break 20. Let's go on the Detroit Pistons type losing streak. that would be tough to do. But
it's funny because I keep seeing these over-unders. I'm like, I know the Nets are trying to lose, but like their roster's not 19 wins bad, but they're going to try to win 19 games, right? So like,
and they won 32 with the talent of Mikal and Cam.
Right.
And
I don't know. the incentive to be, especially because it's not just flag, and then 2026 is supposedly pretty good too. I don't know about drafts, but it's just such an odd inertia of how this goes right now. So you nailed something I think is also interesting though, and that's that it's very interesting. Like when the Warriors were cruising through the league, crushing everybody, right? The Rockets were going for it, and a lot of the teams were like, yeah, we'll try, but like probably not going to beat them until later in the dynasty. The Celtics were really good, got a little better, and a lot of teams in the East are still like, yeah, let's go. Like we can try to keep up. The Knicks clearly are trying to keep up. Orlando got a lot better. The Sixers got a ton better. The Bucks had no resources and somehow got like meaningful stuff on their team. Like the top of the East is really interesting, and that all these teams that have been contenders for a while are trying to get better and chase the top. And I think it's going to make for such a fun dynamic, even though the Celtics are ridiculous. If they won 60 games again, I'd be like, yep, that makes sense, even if Porzingis missing this much time. So what did you make of that pursuit of Boston, even from the Pacers, Magic, Cavs, Heat kind of range? Because they're so good, and yet teams it seems like teams and people covering the league think, yeah, that people are going to try to beat that team, even though they're amazing.
No, I love it because it, like, for example, the Knicks putting together this team that's like 110% chemistry, and that's just what they want to build their reputation on, and hopefully that'll overcome some of the talent gaps between them and Boston. Although Boston, that's another thing people don't talk about, is like Boston's a really tight team. Like they all love playing with each other too, so they have the chemistry and the talent. But I agree, it's like Milwaukee going to get certain free agents that they could slide in because they're an older team, so it's like, and they're up against the cap. So it is what it is. They had to do. They had to make moves on the margins. But Cleveland going to get a different head coach and put in a new system and philosophy. So I love that teams aren't just bowing down, and that's a great example of like Golden State and Houston a few years ago, where Houston was like, no, like we think we can beat this team. And I don't know how you feel about this, but I do believe that when other teams watching the Celtics get through the Eastern Conference unscathed and just not struggling against the Pacers because they swept them, but it's, like every game was close.
My take has been, even though the Pacers were the only team that didn't win a game against the Celtics, they played them better than anybody.
Yeah. It sounds like Minnesota last year or 2 years ago when they played Denver.
Denver,
really well.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And then ended up going to the conference finals the year later. So might be right about that. But every team seeing that the path was pretty easy for Boston in the East and saying, why can't we go 4-7 against them in the second round? And I think Cleveland is a team that thinks they genuinely could have pushed them to the brink if Donovan Mitchell did get hurt and all these guys weren't banged up. Jared Allen, right? So,
yeah, I think their path is a pretty heavily, strongly in one coach. But hey, you know what? We'll see what happens there. Like you look at the 2018 West, Rockets were awesome, Warriors were awesome. They won over 70% of the games. The third best team in the West that year was the Blazers, who won 49 games, right?
Oh, my God.
And I'm not it was still competitive. There were 9 teams with more than 46 wins.
Yeah.
It's just
the New Orleans was also good, I believe, because they had AD and Boogie, I think. So can't remember.
They were okay. Yes, they won 48 games that year. Yes, it's pretty good. Won 5 straight to get to the 6th seed. This is pre-planned. This is so nice. It's so obvious. That was the year that we had the Denver, Minnesota battle for the playoffs.
Yes, right.
Yeah. But yeah, like the Warriors were so good that all these teams are good. They can't just bow out of being good, but it was not worth them cashing in a bunch of chips to go chase. And a lot of teams did that in the East, even if you go back to January, including the Pacers this year, right? The Pacers got Siakam, the Knicks got Bridges, the Sixers got a lot of stuff in the door. The Magic got KCP. All these teams won it. And I think that's so interesting. And the fact that, the Celtics aren't as good as the Warriors were then, but pretty dang good. Yeah. You were all over that this year and looking at teams with a +10 net rating and how they did in the postseason. And it's they just crush everybody. They're in that kind of stratosphere, even though no one thinks of them that way. So the East is going to be interesting to me. How far I'm assuming you have the Celtics first. How far above everybody else do you have them?
Still working on the wins part of that. I'm thinking they're going to win fewer than 64 because they're not going to have the foot. Yeah. So I'm thinking probably about 60 to 61, and the next team maybe 57, 58. So I don't necessarily think that it's going to be a big gap. And maybe I'm overselling. Maybe I'm overestimating that second place team. because as I say that, as that comes out of my mouth, it's like, can the Knicks or the 76ers really win that many games? So maybe the gap is big, but it's not 14 games. It's not 14 games.
Yeah, I think with Porzingis being out for however long, plus just like, you know how hard it's gonna be for them to care about anything.
And they're not going to have Porzingis probably until January, probably until 2025. Honestly, like that's why I would say, because if you're Brad Stevens, if you're Joe Mazzulla, why are you pushing it? Who cares, honestly, if we get the second or third seed, as long as we're in there healthy when it matters.
And
I agree.
The entire changes of their rosters, like they lost O'Shea Brissett and Svi Mikhailuk for Baylor Scheinman and Lonnie Walker. Like it's the same team. it's the same team. They know how good they are, right? They don't have to be all over it unless this hey, Team USA ruined their chemistry or whatever, which is nonsense.
What do you think about Jason Tatum though? Because like, what if they do want to push it so he can win MVP? What if they do want to win 65 games? So I don't,
Can he shoot well enough to win MVP?
That's a good point.
He obviously is an amazing player, but his shot is something's clearly going on, right? Like it's been.
And to be fair, if he didn't win MVP when there were 14 games ahead of second place overall, not just the East overall, like it'd be tough. No, not the. Over or in the East, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't remember what the West team was. Yeah, I think they're just they're in their own class. Hey everybody, let's very quickly talk about the good folks over at BetterHelp. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Kids are always learning, they're always growing, but as adults, sometimes we lose that curiosity. What's something you'd like to learn? Like gardening, maybe a new language, maybe how to finally beat your best friend in bowling. My friends are very good bowlers. Therapy can help you reconnect with your sense of wonder because the back to school era can come at any age. Therapy can be helpful for all sorts of things, like learning positive coping skills, setting boundaries. It empowers you to be the best version of yourself. It is not just for people who have experienced major trauma. So if you have been thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire, get matched with a licensed therapist, switch at any time for no additional charge. Rediscover your curiosity with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. But the rest of the East is very interesting to me. The Knicks are going to be better. Obviously, the Sixers are too. But last year, like people talk about, and it's very interesting with the Pacers. On one hand, the optimists say they made the conference finals. The pessimists are like, hey, they clinched their postseason spot on the last day. These are all facts, but I think it's relevant to say, hey, if they clinch on the last day, and like, do people not remember the last day of the East last year with this Knicks Bulls crazy OT game and the Cavs like not trying, even though they could have won the division and like been the 3 seed, and like this massive Magic Bucks game? Like the fact that it was like that was because the East was really close. Like 50 wins for second, 49 for third, 48 for fourth, 47 through 5, 6, and 7. And then the Heat were 1 win behind. Like 4 wins between second and 8 is not a big gap, right? So I think and some of these teams got better, of course, but I think it was so much closer than people think about, which is why it's harder to predict what the East will be this year, because all those teams, all 7 of them, did stump something to clearly try to get better. And so you can say that like the biggest move teams should be the best. And I think we'll probably both have them 2 and 3 in some order, but they're new. They're looking for something else. And like, that's going to, it's just, it was so close last year that if you're a brand new team, you have to click right away, or else you're going to be right in this morass of teams that we already know are good and can get close to 50 wins.
I know. And that's my favorite type of day, when everyone's playing at the same time on that last day of the season and you don't know the ramifications. I've dealt with that with the Suns and the Clippers in the past, and ironically, them playing each other, and then the winner ends up going to the 3 seed, loser goes like the 6. So it is. I love how close it is, and I agree. Like the changes that New York and Philly, all these teams have, it's going to take some. It's going to take some integration period, which that could give teams with continuity, like the Pacers and the Magic, the continuity teams, that could give them an advantage.
I agree. So on the last day thing, I thought about this while it was happening, even though you can't control this ever. But the Knicks went to overtime, right? And they were on ESPN, right? So their game had more commercials and was longer. I was like, this is a huge advantage because they know what happened in all these other games, and they still won. They could have lost and been 3 and played the Pacers first round. And the whole thing was like, man, this is a huge advantage to know the results of all these games. No one else had that. So If you're playing on the last day, get to overtime. Try to tie. You don't want to win or lose.
And all these coaches have their iPads in the second row, the second row of coaches, right? So I saw Ty Lue turn around to one of his assistants and say, "Who's up in the other game?" Like they're trying to keep track.
I know they'll come up to us before the game, pregame through gritted teeth, say, "Oh, we're focused on ourselves." No, you're not. It's fine. It's okay. It's stupid that losing gets incentivized sometimes, but it's okay. So do you, because the East was so close last year, do you view any sort of obvious separation 2 through 8? And if so, where and from who?
Oh, 2 through 8?
Yes, behind the Celtics.
I think the only separation for me is after 7, because I don't know if we want to talk about specific teams right now or if we want to wait, but for me, I think Orlando is primed to be in that top 7, and I don't think Miami or Atlanta are. And that's just me being a pessimist on my Miami situation this year. So I think if there's any gaps in wins, I think after the Indy, Cleveland, Orlando grouping, I would have a gap of maybe 3 or 4 wins to that 8 seed. So I think there is a separator, but it's not that big. It's kind of meaningless as long as you're the 8 seed and as long as you get in. But
I'm gonna put a gap at the top a little bit. I think there's gonna be Celtics, little gap, Knicks, Sixers, little gap, and then a tight thing, because
just a few wins, right? Just
3 wins, maybe. But enough that it's kind of obvious that they're better, right? The Knicks were already 50 wins. They traded away players who were not in their rotation at all, right? For Mikal Bridges. So they have, by default, like their depth, air quotes, is like worse, whatever. But their top 9 is insane, right? They are going to defend so well. It all makes sense. They have great roles for everybody. And they picked a guy in the first round. They picked a guy early in the second round. They have 2 kind of phony seconds. They have Precious Achua's salary. They have Deuce McBride's. Like, they could get something else too, very obviously, if they need to this year. It's like it's such an obvious team to me that makes so much sense, and they go for it every night in the regular season. Like, barring crazy injuries, which can happen when you play your players as much as Tibbs does, I think they're going to be pretty firmly in the top 3. And I think Philly has probably the best big 3 in the league. I don't know how good the stuff behind them is going to be. I don't know. Boston's top 3 players are really good.
The big 3 arguments, like, who is Boston's big 3? Is it Jalen and KP? Is it?
I would like to say Drew Holiday, but I will let everyone else choose whoever they want. Either way, they fit. Maxey, George, and Embiid fit really well together. So, I mean, after their top 8, they're really shallow. But if they can click in the way it looks like they can, I think they're going to be in the top 3. So I think there's a gap after that. Do you think that that's reasonable? Am I too high or too low on those teams? How are you seeing that go?
No, totally reasonable, because I think Philly has the tools to win 60 games. Don't think they will, obviously, but I think they could. Like, and the thing is, and the
if
reason
they all are healthy, but they won't be.
that's the thing, man. Because what was I think Philly's win rate with Joel last year was a 62 win pace. I think. Yeah. I mean, that's just nuts. Wow. Now he only played 38 or something games, so it's like, well, I think that's what he played. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he played like 40.
It was less than half. You're right about that.
Yeah. So it's like, you can kind of pencil him in to miss 20 games, and that sucks to say. It really does. But and then
17,
something
so
else.
He plays 65.
Huh?
He's gonna miss 17, so he plays his 65.
Yeah, man, that rule it's gonna be tough.
Thumbs down.
Sledding. But I kind of agree that, like, there could be a separator there in the win column. I'm just kind of banking on the Knicks hitting the ground running right off the bat and not really having to adjust that much. Now, I will say, Boston fans don't hate me, but if they had Isaiah Hartenstein, if they were able to keep him, like, they could have got the 1 seed. That team would have been loaded, but they had to give up. They had to sacrifice that. So
I would have sacrificed Hartenstein for Bridges myself, but I agree with you. They would. He was so good in that Pacers series last year. So I agree with those 2 teams being in that spot. Okay, this is a Pacers podcast. Let's load them in, baby. Can the Pacers get up to that tier, and what would it take? So here's the argument in favor of them, is that they had a player who for 3 months was a top 5 to 10 player. who an injury derailed that. If he is healthier, they get 41 and more games of Pascal Siakam because he played half the season on the dot. And then just pick any of this morass of players, right? Andrew Nembhard, Bennedict Mathurin, Ben Shepherd, Isaiah Jackson, Obi Toppin, Aaron Nesmith. All those guys are in their first 5 years in the league, right? So some of them should be better. You can't say for sure because otherwise this would be the easiest thing to project teams in the league. Like young players will always get better. But there's so many in that grouping that some of them, like the odds are, will. So is a combination of better health, which they actually were pretty healthy last year outside of Haliburton, but still. So better health for Haliburton specifically, 41 more games of Siakam, some internal growth. Is that enough to catch those teams, right? Because people would say, oh, the Pacers should have done something. The Knicks and Sixers got away from them. Like, no, they just did a big thing in January. Like, we chill out for a sec. But is it enough to get into the – I think they're behind that group personally. But do you think it's possible for them to get there?
By the way, like how many big things does a small market team have? Like they did their big thing in January. Like they don't have another big thing until another year or two. So
they have enough to do another big thing, but they don't need to do it right now, guys. It's okay.
Yeah, and Rick Carlisle has always been about building a team cohesively and not being a big three project. Like remember that Dallas team that won the title? They all played together for a long time. So I love the continuity factor for this team. And yes, to answer the question, I do think they could get into the 52 to 53 win range, which is in that ballpark of those teams that you're talking about after Boston. So it's Boston, Gap, what would we say, Philly, New York, maybe Gap. So I think they can be better than Milwaukee. I think Milwaukee will win more games just personally because Giannis is a walking 30, 10, and 9 or 30, 10, and 7. It's stupid. But I could see a scenario where just flat out good coaching because I think Indy has better coaching than Milwaukee by a good margin, in my opinion. So I can see where they are the next team at a 50-51 win rate. And they went 40-29 with Tyrese last year. I don't know what they went with Tyrese and Pascal together. That would be kind of the barometer to look at. But I would be willing to bet that was a 48 to 50 win pace, those two together. So I agree.
Well, ironically, it's not because when they traded for Pascal was right when he was doing that thing when he was playing 20 minutes a night coming back from injury because of the, hey, our good friend, the 65 game rule. I don't know that that's why they did that, but I can't imagine it didn't come up a single time in the discussions, right? And so they didn't play very well in that stretch. So the record isn't awesome, but like you said, when Haliburton alone playing was like, oh, they're really good, as the postseason kind of showed, right? So, and 41 more games of Siakam. What is that worth in wins? Is it an interesting discussion to have? One more break here, guys, so we can talk about the good folks over at Gametime, the best way to get tickets to live events, no matter what kind of. They have a new feature called Gametime Picks that make getting those tickets even easier. They filter out the fluff and only show you incredible deals on great seats. You don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets, and plus a 50% off Labor Day offer for Diamondbacks Dodgers coming up very soon. There's super deals. There's curated deals that make it easier to find the best price on great seats. It's the absolute best way to get tickets. They have a view from your seat feature that I love. You can toggle the hidden fee so you can see your full price before you even get to the end. Their lowest price guarantee is fantastic because they'll credit you the difference if you find cheaper seats elsewhere. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? It's game time.
Yeah, I think he's gone underrated. It's crazy to say that because the price tag that it costs to get a guy like that, but I think he's become one of the more underrated guys. And honestly, going to Indy is not going to help that. I mean, I don't know how many national TV games they have, but if he was underrated,
only 9 if you take away NBA TV.
Yeah, so it's tough there, which kind of erases. I don't know if it erases the possibility of him making the All-Star team, but it's like. Pacers, teams like that probably only get one, and it's probably Hallie. So sucks for him, but hey, I think the team is going to be awesome. I think I think I'm almost looking at it, Tony, as a free agency acquisition that they got Pascal, even though they played half the season with him. I'm kind of looking at it as like, okay, now you get a full summer, full off season,
right?
And Rick's teams are always better after they make that. Like they're just always better the longer they're together. So,
yeah, Dame has made me really think about training camp and the value of it. Because he was traded before it last year, but he didn't like train at all in the summer because he didn't want to get hurt. And then all that happened. I want to see how much better he is, because that will be the perfect test case of how valuable training camp can be for a player. Obviously, Siakam played for the Pacers already, but having the full summer, like he invited half the team down to train in his gym, like that'll be really interesting. So I did the Pacers win-loss total exercise when their schedule came out, and it's only 80 scheduled games, right? Which is important to keep reminding people because the in-season tournament games don't. I got to 48, right? So that's 49 or 50, depending who they play in the 2 non-scheduled games. So I kind of think it's going to be tough for that level of team to get up to 55 to 57, but it's possible because there's lots of ways there can be better. And the way they're worse is injuries or just like expectations kick their butt, right? There's not no one. There's very few players who like aging should kick their butt so much that it makes them worse, right? Their oldest player in the rotation's McConnell, who's 32. So is it possible him and Siakam age? Maybe, but I would not personally expect that. So it's just hard to find a way that they would be worse. The only reason the discussion is about their win total is because the rest of the East is better, right? So it's not as easy as just like, oh, they're better, they win more. Well, no, there's other good teams that have to play, but I think their range to me is 4 to, let's say, 7, maybe 8, because of how high I am on Philly, New York. But I think that will be an unpopular take among people who follow the team because they won 47 last year with a lot of stacking stuff for them to be better than that this year.
Yeah, and the reason I'm way more optimistic about this Pacers team than maybe the Oladipo era, where they were always going to be 6, 7, 8, like around that range.
They got the 4 once. They got the 4 once.
They did. That East was pretty bad, right? 2018.
That was the bubble year. Yes, that was.
COVID. Yes. So I think the reason I'm higher on this one is because I think I always lean offense. Like, and this is the best offensive team they've ever had, point blank, period, in franchise history. So even when you go relative to league average, not just the raw numbers that we're seeing in today's crazy NBA, but I will not put it past them to go out west and just blitz teams out west on the West Road trip in the 140s. Like Sacramento and Indiana is a must-see game every time they play because it's just in the 140s every time. And I when you look at teams that maybe lost some star power, you look at a Clippers team, you look at just other teams around the league that maybe lost a star, like those teams are going to struggle to keep up with Indiana's speed and pace and just shooting. I mean, they're going to shoot the leather off the ball if Rick has anything to do with it. So I think offense, although defense travels a lot more, I think we're getting to the point now where you can rely on a top 3 offense to get you a heck of a lot of wins.
Last year, their offense was so good that they could beat anybody, right? They swept OKC. They beat Boston twice. They beat Philly twice. I could go on and on about they swept the Mavs. They have all these high-quality wins. They also got swept by Portland. They lost to Brooklyn and Washington, and they lost twice to Charlotte and 3 times to the Bulls.
If you just split those, there's your 50. Like that's your 50.
So I think that's so obvious to say, right? Oh, if they just go 500 in these awful games, you get to 50. But is it fair to say that and not say they do worse against like OKC, Dallas, Boston? But I don't know how to balance that line of thinking in my head. So the question to me is, if they're the same kind of team where they're like a top 3 offense and a bottom 6 or I think they finished 24th in defense, are they going to just be the same, or is it just kind of all inconsistent all over the place? It's hard for me to separate that. And so maybe they get the 20th on defense and they win more of those crummy games, but I don't know if they'll be
I would rather have that formula because we saw what that formula got them. It got them a fighting chance against Boston in every game of that conference final. I would much rather have that than the Frank Vogel 2014 style. So.
That's fair. Yeah, and I would, even fully healthy, I would have picked them against the Bucks. I did pick them against the Bucks, thinking honestly back by game 3. Like they had the Bucks number anyway. They might have lost to the Knicks fully healthy, but like they can beat anybody, right? So line them up. Let's go. Let's play a series is probably what they're saying.
Did you go into Game 7 in New York thinking that was going to be a win? Because I thought New York was going to blood zone.
I did not think they would. Well, OG came back too, and so I thought, it's gonna be tough. They have not done well in the Garden. They had one competitive game in the Garden before that. It was Game 1, which was the ref game, and after that, they did not compete in that building. So I was like, oh no, this is. I mean, they did well to get here, but good luck, and that was
most efficient Game 7 of all time, right?
Yeah. What even close? Crazy. Yeah. It was so crazy to be there. Like I have lists of games in my head that I'll like never forget, and that easily crazy.
The silence in the crowd was deafening. I guarantee
Aaron Nesmith hit 3 off the dribble, take his man to 15 feet jumpers in a row in the same quarter.
Oh,
just burying a franchise. It was crazy. And now the Knicks are awesome. So
for full transparency for the listeners, I have Indy 5th.
Yeah, we're getting to that now. So perfect.
Okay, cool.
Well, so that's what I was going to say. How do you discern this next grouping if we're consistent with the top 3 of Milwaukee, Cleveland, Orlando, Indiana, I guess Miami? Like how do you chop that up? Who rises to you? Where do the Pacers fall? It's close. It's really close.
It's the most. I say this every year. I'm going to become a broken record. This is the most agonizing it's been to go through and pick who finishes, because you feel like you're disrespecting or just not giving credit to these teams, and therefore the fan bases get pissed at you. But it is what it is. It's like Cleveland. I don't think you're bad. I'm going to say you're the 6th best team in the East until I'm proven otherwise, and because I mean, when they run into injuries, we saw how quickly things can go downhill with them, especially if it's the rim protection with Jared Allen. So I don't know, and I'm still waiting for Evan Mobley to take the next leap. I don't know if that's going to happen. And then the first 2 months of the season is going to be Kenny and his staff going in there and putting in new stuff that they may or might not like. So it's like I don't know what to really do with Cleveland. Orlando, I can just hear their fans now. Like, you think we're number 7 in the East after 4 or 5 last year? And internal growth and improvement. And by the way, Jonathan Isaac probably playing more minutes this year as the best defender on planet Earth when he wants to be. It's tough. It's tough. I don't even really have a good rationale for the way I did it, but I do think it's Indy because of internal growth, Siakam, that being kind of a free agency maneuver, if you will, and then Cleveland, Orlando, Miami. So I got Indy is the best out of that group, Cleveland, Orlando, Miami.
It's really hard to separate. So we already talked about how close they were in wins. Last year, Celtics, best point differential, wasn't close. Knicks were second, wasn't really close relatively. Pacers was third, and the Sixers was fourth, right? And they finished 6-7. And then you get to the Cavs, then the Bucks, then the Cavs, then the Magic. The Magic were actually 7th at point differential last year.
Yeah.
Right. And so they are going to say the same things about their team that I have said about the Pacers. And they should. They'll say, hey, we have how many young players in our rotation? Wendell Carter, Franz Wagner, Paolo Banchero, go on and on. Jalen Suggs is young. Cole Anthony's young. Some of those guys are going to get better. They're absolutely right. They added KCP. Perfect fit. Go guard and shoot threes. Yeah. Perfect fit. Their defense is going to be nasty. But it's more reasonable with point differential to talk about them coming from 7th. Have they done enough to get up from there? Will they be better in close games? What's that going to look like? I don't know.
Yeah.
The Cavs whole offseason after winning 40 games. One more. The Cavs were 1 loss from the play-in last year, right? Like,
that's a good point. That's a really good point when you're using this as
plus 2.4. That's 6th best point differential in the East. They have no new rotation players. It's the same team. So I think Kenny Atkinson will make them better. I think Mobley will be better. They're making the same argument that the Cavs and Pacers are making. Well, hey, look at this. There's Garland's young. Evan Mobley's young, right? Okay. So someone has to separate in that group. And so is it KCP's addition? Is it Kenny Atkinson? Is it Siakam 41 games? What actually matters in separating those teams? Because I like you think Giannis is a really, like, you're getting to 48 at least, right? Like, they're going to be.
It should be 50, but Glenn Rivers knocks that down to.
And Prince, right? Trent is an insane trio of minimum guys, not only because they're like resourceful, but because the guys they're kicking out of the rotation stunk last year, right? So there's a lot. That's really good stuff.
A healthier Middleton, probably.
Yeah, anything. So their question is, can that offset the aging of their team? But if they have Giannis, they'll be awesome, right? So I think it's going to be Bucks 4. And then how you and anyone separates Pacers, Cavs, Magic is about what you think of their team dynamic change from last year this year on top of their hopes for internal development. Because, you could say 41 more games of Siakam or 82 games of KCP or a new coach. What does that amount to in wins? And so that's really hard. That's really hard to actually separate.
I love the Orlando Indy dynamic specifically because they are the litmus test of
they're foils, man. It's perfect.
Is the offense more important now, or is the defense? And what did they win? They won similar amount of games last year, right? 47. Man, it is perfect. It is perfect. It's like it's styles make fights, and I want to see that as a playoff series. See if Orlando could keep up with that offense.
It will never happen because of the markets, but that would be a sick rivalry because they are both one young stud, a lot of other good players, but just totally opposites in how they win, right? And so that would be like if you could combine those teams, whew, man, you'd be cooking.
Now, I do believe though, if the one separator or could be separator in this is what if we're just underestimating the jump that Paulo takes? I mean, what if he's an All-NBA player? It's like if that's the case. If that's the case, if he goes whatever he's averaging now to 28, 8 and 5 this year, and putting up like LeBron Cleveland numbers back in the day when inflation wasn't crazy, I could see them winning 50 games. I don't feel good guessing on that stuff. I feel good with the offense that we've seen from Indiana the last couple years, and Pascal diversifying what they do defensively. So, I mean, I'm putting faith in that being a more well balanced team, and Orlando's still going to have a bottom 12 offense. I'm sorry, they still are.
I think Franz will shoot better. But yeah, KCP's not going to create shots, right? Like they're still going to have some of the same issues on that end. So how anyone separates them? I guess if your arguments are reasonable, that's fine. I could see some people saying, well, who's the best player on those teams? Let's rank it that way. Mitchell, Haliburton, Bankero, how do you rank it's like
just no calling people idiots if we have your team in 7.
They were so close last year, and they will be close again this year. But that I think will be the race to make the playoff field is being in the top 2 of those 3 teams. Because
does Miami have enough to?
That's what I was going to say. Finish off the East with Miami.
Yeah, do they have enough left to tell us to F off in this discussion? Like,
is Jimmy Butler contract year enough to become a top 6 East team? Because they are the same, basically. And but it's Miami. I can't just I'm not going to put them to the side. I don't know. It's hard.
Well, it's the same Miami with a Tyler Hero that's beefed up and got more tattoos. So I don't know if I don't know if that makes them better. Oh, it's bad, Tony. It's Tyler Hero tattooed. It's bad. But
so they lost in terms of real players, Delon Wright and Caleb Martin, right? Some other guys who
Caleb Martin thing was weird. Yeah,
the Martin thing was weird. But Alec Burks, maybe I'm higher on him because I just saw him make every shot in the Knicks Pacers series. But that's a good minimum deal. And then that's it. Everyone else they added was a rookie. So are they actually better? Are they just hoping contract year Jimmy plus health makes it better? I think most people are going to have them 8th. And I think that is fair.
You can't even say plus health because they never have it.
Never.
So Bam Adebayo is the only reliable piece on that team. I mean, he is. You can't even say Tyler Hero. The dude gets hurt, has a broken hand, has something going on every year. So, and Jimmy's going to sprain his ankle because he plays every minute like it's his last. So that's going to be a problem. And I love Spo to death, but I'm not believing in the Magic. No pun intended. I'm not believing the Heat Magic. So what's Miami's range? 49 is their ceiling. I don't think they can be a 50-win team.
I agree. They were the 8 seed when they made the finals, right? So like, it's not like you can use the finals.
It's a playoff podcast. This is a regular season.
That's right. Also, it hit me like a truck when Bam turns 27. Like, I'm like, dude, this dude's still 22 to me. It's so wild.
Oh, yeah.
27. That's crazy. Okay, we have similar tierings. I think the team I would have the most variance on is either Philly or Milwaukee, but I think everybody else is pretty close to where they're going to be last year. No. Could I be wrong? Hell yeah.
I don't think Milwaukee can. Like, put it this way, Tony. If Milwaukee had so many problems last year and they still finished third at 49, I don't think they can be worse. I don't think they can have a range that's that high because I think they are kind of stuck 4 to 6.
Shane, what was their record with Doc Rivers?
Oh my gosh. That's right. So
that's why.
They got 30 of those wins with Griffin, didn't they?
Yeah. They were 30 and 13. Man.
Dang it.
They fired him. Okay. I agree with you. I think the big picture East thing to say and what the Pacers should be smiling and blushing about is, look, maybe making the top 6 is harder, but making the playoffs is much easier in the East this year than it was last year. And they already made it. So every team will be happy. I don't want to go too long on the West because this is an Eastern Conference team who, in fact, I'll only make you answer one West question. What West team do you think you're the farthest from the consensus on?
Ooh, furthest from the consensus.
Yes.
That is challenging because I think the consensus.
I can go first if it gives you time to think.
Go ahead. I have a couple ideas, but you go ahead.
You live in the area of the team that I'm going to pick. The Phoenix Suns. Because I think Bud is an awesome coach. And in the regular season, they'll be better because of that alone. Right? And I don't even care about the health stuff or who they added or didn't add. Bud alone will make them way better. I don't know if they'll be better in the postseason, but I think the Suns are going to win 50 games this year. The Suns, I think I'm the farthest from.
Hey, 49 last year. 49 last year. Bradley Beal had, you name the injury, Bradley Beal had it. Broken back, ankle, whatever. He had it. So I agree. Bud is going to make them way better than they were last year.
I love Bud.
That does not mean that they're Thunder or Timberwolves level. Like, I just don't think it does.
If I had to make a second answer, it would be the Clippers. I think they might be kind of bad.
Oh, okay. Bad, yeah. Ty Lue would disagree. But
he would, and so would Kawhi. But you know what?
Furthest from the consensus, it's tough because I think the consensus is that Denver got worse. I think that's the consensus. And I'm also with that. Also with that. I just don't know. I don't want to go like too overboard and say like they're going to be a play-in team. Like that's ridiculous. They have Nikola Jokic. You know what? I think Golden State's going to be really good this year. Really good. And I don't know what that means numerically. I don't know if that means 50 wins. They're back in the championship hunt. Steph's going for ring number 5. But they won 46 last year. Couldn't get out of the play-in. I think they are a clear better team without Clay and with the team that they made or the changes they made. So to Golden State.
Clay he's fine, but he was quietly not awesome last year. And they got a lot of like actually good stuff with the resources made available by signing and trading him. Right. D'Anthony Melton's really good.
D'Anthony Melton should start. If all goes well, he should start.
I've been a long-standing D'Anthony Melton fan, right? And that doesn't even account for Slow-Mo and Buddy from the trade itself, the MLE Open front. They could be good. They could also be too small. They have a lot of guys who they will want to play, and they can't play all of them.
I have another quick mention. Right. I am down on Sacramento.
Ooh.
I just don't think that DeMar answers the questions that they had at all. And does he make them more exciting? That's debatable because they were run and gun. They were fast. They were good with Domas and De'Aaron. Now they're a little bit slower. They're a little bit worse defensively. He's taken more shots and more minutes from Keegan Murray. So I
thought the same way about the Lakers and Kings with DeMar is that they actually were the better fits to me of the reportedly interested teams because those teams already didn't have great spacing. So DeMar doesn't subtract from your spacing, but he is good at operating and like their offense will be better because they have him. But you're right about the long-term Keegan stuff and the defense and all that will matter. I don't know what to make of them. Sabonis.
Luckily, we're not doing a West podcast.
Sabonis is going to play 80 games at a top 20 level, and their floor is pretty good because of that. It's just how it is.
If we had trouble separating the East, it's a good thing we're not doing the West. I mean, the
West is insane. Again, someone's going to win. Someone's going to win 45 games and not even playing the play-in. Not even playing the play-in.
And you know what? Dallas fans are they're rabid Wolverines when you come at them and say that they're going to be like a play-in team. Like, we just made the finals. Are you kidding me? It's like, I don't know. Maybe. Like they might be a play-in team.
I can't go there.
So, I can't. I'm not either. But
Shane, this was great. Everybody yell at us why we're wrong. I'm on Twitter at Tony Aries, or you can comment down below on YouTube. Or can people yell at you, Shane? Or do you want to just defer them to yell at me?
I would prefer they yell at Tony. Get him in trouble. I mean, he's going to be covering some fun playoff fever basketball, and I'll probably just get one quick series. So.
The Fever will probably also get one series, not because they aren't really good, but because they can't get a high enough to not play the Sun, the Lynx, or the Liberty in the first round.
So, but yeah, I mean, you can holler at me at Twitter at YoungNBA. I got some cool stuff in the works for the following week, so the week of September 9th coming up. And drop some W-related stuff, and also my win projections, what we're talking about now. So it'll be fun.
I love those. They are very helpful for me. And you are one of the few people who goes back in and makes sure it all adds up to the right number, which I also appreciate. I hate when people do that where it's well over. I'm like, this is not possible. This is literally not possible.
Which means Detroit, get ready for 12 wins because we have to take wins from somewhere, right?
To make it work out. Usually I just figure out how far over the number I am, and then I just divide everybody by the same.
Okay, that's a good point. Yeah.
I don't know if that's the best way to do it. Tomorrow, back on the best individual seasons in Pacers history series, doing power forwards. The only player to make second or first team All-NBA for the Pacers in one season was a power forward. I'm guessing he's going to be high on the list. Who else will rank high there? We'll get to it all tomorrow. Shane, thank you very much for the time. Everybody, thanks for listening. We'll catch you very soon.